defined by equations. Yesterday we looked at functions by looking at tables and graphs. One input, one output. Here, we're going to look at functions using an equation, and the only thing that's really tricky is the way we name the functions. So, first of all, it's going to be easiest actually for me to just give you an example. There's a couple different ways that we're going to make this look. So let me first write an example, and then I'll explain what all this means. Because it's hard to explain it without looking at an example. Okay. We don't need that bottom part yet. So here's what this means. What I was trying to say at the beginning is the hardest part of this is just understanding by looking at this, what is all this? Here, this first letter, this is the name of it. We're calling it function f, right? I don't know, we could call it Bob, but we just use letters instead. But it's like its name. We're saying, oh, which function? Oh, function f. Using this variable. So after the colon, it just says, I've got a function and we're going to use the variable x. This part here is the function itself. So all you really need to look at is, if it looks like this, I'm going to show you a couple different styles that how we can write these functions. But if it looks like this, it's saying, okay, this is function f, I'm using the variable x, and then it points to, it's actually not even an equation right now, it's just an expression. Now, here's what's going to happen with this. You will be given, I'm only showing two, I believe your book has three. For each function, you will be given an a, a b, and a c. We'll just do a and b for now. You're going to be given, for function f, take this value that's in the parentheses and plug it in to the variables. So this is saying, in function f, instead of x, put a 4. That's all that means. So again, the hardest part is just looking at this, wait, what do I do with this? What does this stuff mean? So again, a says in function f, okay, that's what I'm calling this one, function f, instead of the x variables, I'm going to plug in a 4. So it says x squared, okay, there's my 4 instead of my x, 4 squared, minus 2 times x, well, if x is 4, 2 times 4. So again, I took this part that I boxed in orange. This is the function part. This says plug a 4 in, and that's all we're doing. The math part itself, once you get to this, should not be too hard. So here is my a, I plug the 4 in, I follow PEMDAS. Exponents first, then multiplication, I get 16 minus 8. When I plugged one value in for x, the 4, I got one output, 8. Let's do it again for b. This says, okay, in function f, now use negative 3 instead of the variable. Negative 3 squared minus 2 times negative 3. So we just plug it in. All you're doing with this really is substituting a value for the variable and simplifying. That part should be the easy part. It's just looking at these and going, wait, what is that all about? The notation is confusing. Negative 3, okay, negative 3 squared is 9. I do the multiplication next. Now here, I'm going to include the negative with the 2. Negative 2 times negative 3, positive 6, 9 plus 6, 15. Any questions on what I did there? Daniel?
How did you get the 4 on example A?
It's given to you in the book.
Never mind.
You mean this 4 here?
No, the one after the negative.
Well, you take this 4 and you plug it in. 4, 4. Do you understand what I mean when I say plug it in for the variable? Okay, so that's all I did, Daniel, since A says take this 4 and plug it in for the variable. So here, I plugged it in. If it was an x, it now has to be the number. Okay? Okay, so this is one way. This is one way that a function can be written. There's another way it can be written. So you'll see something like that. And then the other way is, let's do, instead of f, let's call it function s. And then it has parentheses. Now again, I'll do the same like I did on that first one, and I'll show you what it means. And I'm going to show you a different way that they'll show you of what you're plugging in. So just copy all this down, and then I'll explain what it all means. Again, just understanding all this notation is the hardest part. All we're doing is plugging in values in place of the variable. So in this case, I've got function s. That's its name. Which one? Oh, function s. Oh, that one. Okay. So that we can tell them apart. Using this variable, so now we're putting it in parentheses instead of using a colon. Here is the function itself. And instead of having an A, a B, and a C, on the last example I just did the A and the B, right? But some of them will look like that. This is kind of the same thing. Here's an A, a B, and a C. They just don't label them A, B, and C. D is for domain. Remember, the domain is the first part. It's what you plug in. The range is the output, what you get out, or your answers. So the other way, again, that it'll look, it's function S. It's going to use the variable Z. We look at the equal sign, that says, okay, here's my function. And instead of A, B, C with the parentheses, here's a domain of -2, 0, and 2. Now again, this time, to save time, I'm just going to do the A and the B. I don't think we need to do all three. But all we're going to do is one at a time. We're going to take each one separately. So I'm going to start with -2, is I'm going to plug them in for the variable. Here the variable is Z. So 5 minus 4 times Z, well in this case, -2. So I take the first domain option and I plug it in. If there was more than one variable, I plug it into all the variable spots. In this case, it's just the one. Again, we follow PEMDAS. I need to do multiplication first. I'm going to include the negative with it. -4 times -2 makes +8. So 5 plus 8, there's my range, my output of 13. Let's do the next one. Let's do our B value, which is 0. 5 minus 4 times 0. Again, the math part shouldn't be too hard. You're just following PEMDAS and simplifying. Again, we do multiplication first. Anything times 0 is 0. So 5 plus 0 is 5. There's my output, or my range. Now, for each of these, you're going to be given either 3 domains like this. So you plug it in 3 separate times and you get out 3 separate answers. For each input, you need to get 1 output, right? For each domain, there is 1 range that goes with it. It's either going to look like this with 3 in the little curly brackets, or it's going to look like this where it will have the function and then it will have an A, a B, and a C, and you do the same thing. 1 input, 1 output. 1 input, 1 output. For each input, you get a different output. Question?